Welcome everybody. This is the Supervisor of Elections Office in Manatee County. Tonight is election night. It's the 15th, the day we've all been looking for the presidential preference primary. There's been a lot of confusion with people because unless they're registered Republican or registered Democrat, they cannot vote in this particular race. This is really set up by the parties to narrow down the number of candidates who might be running for president. Since the last time y'all were here, we've done a lot of remodeling in the office. We've got some new equipment. Instead of using the great big EVID machines to check people in and out, we're now using little iPads. We've come into the 21st century here as far as the technology goes. Behind me is the vote tabulating equipment. We sent out a little over 40,000 vote by mail applications, and we've gotten a little over 30,000 of those back already, probably 33,000 at the end of the day. And this machine behind me, we've actually got two of them. Instead of spending literally hours and hours and hours, day after day after day, hand feeding ballots through, this machine here literally does in minutes what would take us hours to do before. So we've got two of those, and because more and more people are voting by mail, they're finding the convenience of it, and so we're seeing a huge increase in the vote by mail. We also had 5 early voting sites open before we got here. And so the people who voted early, we've had 11,500 roughly who voted early this year because they wanted to take advantage of the convenience of being able to vote anytime over a 10-day or an 8-day period of time. And so that's really worked out. Now tonight, starting right now, basically at 5 o'clock, the canvassing board will be meeting. What the canvassing board does is sometimes with vote by mail, the signatures don't match up. They really don't look quite as right. And a lot of people, they sign the electronic pads at the DMV when they register to vote. And when they actually sign the ballot, it doesn't quite look the same. So the canvassing board will be looking at all of those. Over the next couple of days, we'll also have a lot of people who moved. They changed addresses. Their paperwork didn't quite catch up with them. And so then the canvassing board over the next couple of days will be looking at all of those applications. We won't do those tonight unless they're really unusual, but we spend it'll be about 3 days from now, 4 days from now when we canvass those provisional ballots. And so that's where we're at right now. We're in our new digs. It's working really well. The voting today went extremely well. We got in here this morning around 5:30, and we'll be here tonight probably until 9:30, 10 o'clock, wrapping all of this up. A lot of people don't realize that the staff of the Supervisor of Elections Office, we normally have a staff of around 15 to 17 people year-round, but during an election like this, we will actually hire and put on the payroll an additional 1,000 people. And those 1,000 people will be out working on all the polls, the poll workers, the staff, the telephone bank, to answer all the questions that are coming up out in the field. And so it's really quite a process. But we will be here tonight probably until 9:30. The polls close at 7, and at 7 o'clock we will bring everything together, run the final batch of the ballots that are in vote by mail. We will accept them up until 7 o'clock in our office. Right now we've got the runners out going to the U.S. Post Office, a distribution center, to pick up that last bunch of ballots that might be hanging out over there. And so we've got the staff in the back processing ballots, and we'll be processing up here, running them through the equipment. The canvassing board will be looking at all of the ballots, and we'll be trying to wrap up all the polling places. At 7 o'clock, all of the outside polling places, all 7 of them, will shut down. They then will wire their results in. It'll all come in by cell phone, and it'll go to that machine right over there. And that machine over my shoulder will actually tabulate all those ballots. So somewhere tonight around 7:30, we will have the results of the voting in Manatee County. So it's quite an unusual process, but glad to share it with you.
So I've worked with Judge Singer and Mr. Bennett for quite a long time, and we get along real well. We seem to see eye to eye on how to evaluate questionable ballots, but our mutual philosophy is that we're going to tilt in favor of the voter, trying our best to have every vote count if there's any possible legal way. So it's a very American process, and I can assure you that we take it very seriously, and our decisions are not made lightly. We as I say, we truly try to make a vote count if at all possible. We find ourselves serving as writing experts in some sense, even though none of us are experts. We try our best though to say, well, that M looks exactly like the M in their printed name, therefore we'll say that that's a valid ballot. And there's all kinds of permutations as far as the errors that are made on ballots, wrong signatures and indecipherable signatures, crisscross signatures on a husband and wife. But we work our way through them, and we save most of the ballots. We don't get to see the ballot itself. All we see is the envelope, the outside envelope, which is by law is supposed to be signed, printed and signed name. And that's usually what we're trying to evaluate, is whether it's the right name and whether it's properly executed so that it can be counted. Well, this is a process that's being done very professionally by people that take a lot of pride in their work. The staff here at the Supervisor of Elections Office is extremely dedicated and trying their best to make sure that everything they do is proper and adequate. The feeling on election day and election evening in a place like this is electric. I think we're all just excited about what's going on. It's such a big part of being an American, and we're all happy to be a part of that.
Commissioner Larry Bussell, who's past chairman of the County Commission, and myself, and we make up the canvassing board. Scott Farrington is the one who's really going to run this show, and Scott has done it for a long time. He joined us 3 years ago, and since then he's made everything run smoothly, and we're going to keep it going that way. And I think the first thing we'll do is let him kind of explain of how we're going to do this.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through a set of vote by mail ballots that we've received, and there's something wrong with it. The first set we have, they came back and the voter has not signed the ballot. By law, if a voter does not sign the ballot, we send them notice that they have up until 5 p.m. on the Monday before the election, which was yesterday, to fill out an affidavit, return it to us, stating that they requested the ballot, they filled out their own ballot, and they are signing that affidavit and providing identification with it to prove that they are who they are.
All right, and this is a canvassing board meeting. This is a public meeting. The room we're in, although the students watching this won't be able to see it, behind us is an open area where anyone can stand right behind us and watch everything and hear everything that we're doing, and I'll call this meeting to order.
So I'm going to start with the ones that the affidavits have come in. We did get them yesterday before 5 p.m.
So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the name of the person to make sure that matches up with the affidavit, along with the address, and then attached to the affidavit is some proof of identity. In this case, there's a medical report, and the addresses all match, so this is approved. And I'll pass it down to the other members of the canvassing board, because it takes a vote of the majority of the canvassing board to say that this is approved, so that the ballot can be accepted as opposed to rejected.
Okay.
So the canvassing board accepts that ballot. Well, all the people, whether you're in Manatee County, a resident of the other 66 counties of the state of Florida, or a citizen of the United States eligible to vote, first and foremost, we want to make sure throughout the whole country that we have a fair election and that everyone who's eligible to vote excuse me, knows how to register to vote, and that they're able to efficiently and effectively cast their ballot for the candidate of their choice. We don't want to have voter fraud. We don't want mistakes. We want every vote to count. And the canvassing board in Manatee County and in the other 66 counties in Florida, there's one for every county, is responsible to make sure that all the election equipment works correctly. It's all electronic now, that there's a clear logic and accuracy to the machines. We check them out. The staff does it first, then the canvassing board meets several weeks before the election to verify that the machines properly count sample ballots. We make sure that the machines are, after we do the testing, zeroed out so that they're ready for the vote themselves. And then as the votes come in, that they are correctly counted. Of course, in any process, whether it's an election or the running of a court system or administering a county, there are going to be problems and complications. And in every organization, then you have to have some organized way of dealing with the complications. In this case, it's a canvassing board. It's one of the county judges is appointed by the chief judge. Usually it's the county administrative judge for the county court. The chairman of the county commission and the supervisor election. We're three distinct elective offices. Of course, we have the judiciary represented. We have the legislature through the county commission, and arguably the executive branch through the supervisor of elections. So we have one representative of each branch of the government who sits at a table to deal with the complications. We make sure that staff for the supervisor elections has properly prepared all the machines so that they can accurately count the ballots. And then as the ballots start coming in, and over the past decade, we've had more and more write-in ballots, which create a set of problems. We make sure that when these problems come up, that the ballots can be properly analyzed to ensure that every vote counts. The primary problem with the absentee ballots are that people have registered to vote and given a signature exemplar, like you would when you go through the line at a supermarket with your credit card. That exemplar, which is on file digitally, should closely match the signature that you put on the outside of the absentee ballot. If staff looks at it and there's a question as to whether or not you have a signature match, then the ballot is put aside, and then at regular intervals, starting when the absentee ballots are accepted by the supervisor of elections, the canvassing board reviews those ballots and compares the signatures to the signatures that are on file to see if they do match. If there's a problem, or if a ballot doesn't have a signature that you can even match with to begin with, then the voter is notified and requested to come in with an affidavit of signature so that they can testify through the affidavit that they are in fact the voter, and that signature is then compared along with the proof of identity, whether it's a driver's license or otherwise. And so as you saw tonight as we were going through this process, we have several categories of problems that we look at. Most common is that a husband and wife or spouses will receive absentee ballots at the same household, and one will fill the envelope of the other. And each will sign the wrong envelope, and then we look at the envelopes to be sure that everything's correct. We don't look at the ballot in those instances. The ballot is sealed, but we look at the exterior of the ballot to make sure that it is correct. Now, as the actual voting takes place, as it did today, there are any number of ballots that may have been rejected by the machine, or absentee ballots, once the envelopes are properly verified, that are opened, and they go through the machine. If there's no vote on the ballot, or if there's an overvote where more than one person has been put as the voter's preference, or if there's other writing on the ballot, then the ballot is rejected by the machine, and then staff and ultimately the canvassing board looks at the ballot to determine what the voter's intent was. In many cases, you can determine what the intent was. Say someone decided that they were going to vote for candidate A, but before the day was out, candidate A announced publicly throughout the country that they were dropping out of the race. So they put an X through candidate A and they vote for candidate B. The machine's not going to accept that because there's two markings. The canvassing board will get it. Staff will be directed to prepare a duplicate ballot only with the vote for candidate B, and then the machine will accept it. But it's the canvassing board that makes the ultimate decision in all of those questions that come up. Well, it is. And, you know, the position I'm a trial court judge. Two of the most important things that we are called upon to do as citizens, one is to vote, and the other is to participate in jury service. And just as we believe that every vote of every juror, when you're serving as a juror, we require unanimous verdicts, is critical, so too is it important, even one vote at a time, that every single vote of a voter counts. And our job is to make sure that to the best that we can, we need to ensure that every vote does count. We also have to ensure that there's no fraud, which is why the signature comparison is such an important aspect of what we do. And all three of us are elected officials. We know what the process is because we've had to go through the process. The entirety of all the people in Manatee County, statewide and throughout the country, require that it's elected officials who are responsible for conducting the elections are beyond reproach, and that they will have the confidence of all the citizens that the work that we do will be done to the highest standards. And we set the highest bar we can to make sure that we're doing our job properly. Well, they have a tremendous burden. I don't think the general public can comprehend how complex, especially with the advent of technology, the job of the supervisor of election is, especially in a presidential election. This is the primary, which is the lead up, and we have a certain percentage, maybe 40%, if I was given the right numbers, of our registered voters participating in the primary election. This November, it's expected that it'll be 75% or more of the registered voters. So this is a tune-up for the supervisor elections office leading to that big election in November, which is every 4 years. The presidential election is the biggest and has historically the highest turnout. Mike Bennett, since he took over this office several years ago, has done an exemplary job keeping his experienced staff, bringing in others who are very experienced in the election process, who know how it works. It is very complex. When I first became chair of the canvassing board several years ago, I opened up the Florida statutes as a good lawyer, judge, law student would do to start reading it, and it is really hard to plow through all the intricacies that there are in the election laws. A supervisor election must have a staff that is well familiar with those laws. And of course, Mike Bennett, having been former Senator Bennett, having spent many years in the state legislative process, understands that process very, very well. We are very lucky to have such a high-quality office here. It makes the job of the supervisor of elections, it makes the job of the canvassing board much easier when you have a very qualified supervisor of elections office. Within about 2 weeks of the election, the canvassing board reconvenes. We will be convening on the 30th of March, which is slightly more than 2 weeks from today. I think it has to be done within 15 days of the election. That would be the 15th day. And all the machines are locked up now once the votes have been transmitted. These are new machines that work from the precinct. They have a cellular phone chip in them, and once the polls closed and each of the precincts, the 71 precincts, telephoned in their vote tally electronically through a secure system to the computers here in the election supervisor's office. Of course, we have the absentee ballots. All those are run through a machine. Each machine still has a way to audit the machine. A tally is printed out for the number of votes and for whom they were cast. That then is compared to the electronic reports that were made by each of the precincts to determine whether or not the machines have been accurate. The state law requires that a certain percentage of machines are pulled for auditing purposes. So we will come back, we'll spend about 4 or 5 hours here. The canvassing board will select at random by basically pulling numbers out of the hat for the different precincts, which machines need to be audited. Then the ballots will be rerun through the machine to verify that the results were accurate. Then once we've determined that, we'll certify the election results as being accurate. Then all the machines are zeroed out and new register receipts, for lack of a better description, are pulled to make sure that they are zeroed, that the machines are emptied. Then the machines will be sealed, and they'll remain sealed until early voting starts for the next general election. Well, that's right, and it's the same process. It's followed repeatedly. So 2 weeks ago, before we got started, we did the logic and accuracy testing of the machines that had been zeroed out the last time, and a representative sample of the machines are pulled out, they're turned on, they're checked to make sure they're all zeroed, and then we have a fake election. That's basically one where ballots have been pre-marked. So candidate number 1 would have 1 vote. Candidate number 2 would have 2 votes. Candidate 3 would have 3 votes, and on, depending on how many candidates you would have. And so there's a stack of ballots that have already been pre-marked, and then they're sent through each of the machines to verify that the machines are accurately counting the known votes. And once we have that, we get the register receipts. We compare that with the information that's been transmitted electronically to be sure that they match. If everything matches up very well, then we certify that the machines are ready, they're locked down again, and then send out to each precinct so they can be ready to receive the ballots. If there's a problem, well, then everything stops until the problem can be isolated. That's why it's done 2 weeks before the election, to make sure that there's enough time to find out what the problems are.
It's a long process when you're doing thousands
You
of
do it
them.
all at one sit down, go through
No,
all
no,
of
this
these?
is the second time.
Third time.
Third time. This is the third time we've narrowed it down and getting the pile. Even when we get done with this pile, we've still got more coming in tonight up until 7 o'clock, and some of those may go through the same process.
But these we held from the previous meetings because there was no signature in the signature block, so they were sent affidavits to verify.
I'm okay with that.
In this case, most of these have had the person either very clearly print their name on the top to match the
she's
printing
fine.
on their registration, or they've actually signed it on the top and that matches their registration. So even though they didn't sign specifically where it says sign here, we've got enough discretion that we can say that's the correct voter who is registered, we're gonna accept the ballot.
The next group I'm going to show you, they did not sign. There's no marking on the ballot at all.
So these are completely blank. And here we don't have any discretion at all. It is not accepted by state law. And we've done any number of these over the different elections we've had. So if you decide to vote by mail, make sure you sign the outside.
Charles, it's a little bit after 7. The polls are now closed, okay? Now we've got to do the huge wrap-up. The canvassing board is still here. The canvassing board's probably going to be here tonight until 9:30. Between the last time you looked at the canvassing board and now, we have received approximately another 1,000 ballots from vote by mail. They were either in our drop-off boxes here, or they came in our late mail pickup. We sent the mail run down at 5:15, 5:30 to catch those last ones. And in fact, as we went to the main distribution center down in Televest, because we wanted to give everybody an opportunity if they possibly could. So now the hard work goes. We've got drivers all over the place picking up equipment, closing up precincts. We're going to have clerks starting to deliver bags down here. Our staff will be checking those bags in to make sure that the ballots come back, all the equipment comes back, there were no issues, no incidences, so we've got to walk through all of that. The staff back here, we're really lucky tonight because we're going to have some help from the Boy Scouts of America, and every year the Boy Scouts have come down, and it's really kind of neat because like Domino's Pizzas, they're sending over like 20 pizzas to feed the Boy Scouts. And you know, the kids eat good, we eat good, and it's all about food. I mean, that's what this whole election thing is about. So, well, what'll happen is out in the field, they're closing down those precincts. Everybody closes down at 7 o'clock. They will start downloading wirelessly, okay, to our main computer here. She will be compiling those results as they come in. And in just a few minutes, we will actually start posting those for the public to see. When they download at the poll, at the actual poll, they will get a printout of showing you exactly what the vote was, and that will actually be posted on the door of the particular polling place. So let's say that you're a candidate and you're running out in Parrish, for example. If you were on the ballot, you would be able to go and see how you stood in the Parrish precinct where you voted. And it gives a little bit faster that way. But those results will all be down here tabulated, so we got a long way to go, and it'll happen pretty quick.
Well, the process went really well. Every election is its own unique experience. It definitely is. Every election has its own challenges. It has its own whole life. And this one was different from every other one. Some of our challenges were, one, we had new voting equipment, so there was a little bit of hesitation and uncertainty on the poll workers' side. So there was some of that to get over first thing in the morning, but I think they did really well in getting over that. Some of the issues that we dealt with are voters not understanding how Florida works as far as a closed primary goes. We had a lot of voters that came that either A, weren't sure what party they were registered, and so when they got there, then they found out they were registered a different party than they thought. They were not excited about that. They didn't get the ballot they were expecting. Or they were registered as an independent or a nonpartisan or no party affiliation. And in Florida, that means in this particular election, there's nothing for them to vote on. Well, a lot of people don't understand that, and especially if they come from a different state that has different laws. So there was a lot of people that walked in and didn't understand that, and that, of course, caused phone calls. It causes people not to be happy because they're wanting to vote, and in this particular case, they don't have the chance to. You have to be registered either a Republican or as a Democratic voter 29 days before the election in order to vote for those candidates in those parties. And that is, it's not completely unique to Florida. There's a lot of states that are like that, but there's just as many states that are not like that. So, you know, Florida being the way it is, people come from all over the country to retire here or just move here, and so they are more familiar with where they came from than they are from here as far as how voting works. So, like you said, it is new equipment, and so it is the top of the line that we can get. So one of the great parts of that was we had about 75% of our precincts had reported their results within about 15 minutes of the closing of elections. So that's amazing. That's very quick. That's the best we've ever had. And we had all of our precincts had had transmitted their results to us by 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. So within an hour, we had all of our results from all of our precincts, and that's great. And that is directly related to the new voting equipment we had. We have never had that before on our other equipment. So it does help us. It helps us for a lot of reasons. One is we've become a society that we want everything right now, and election results are definitely no different. The media, they want it as quick as they can get it, and so does everybody else. But so it takes, to get them in quickly and be able to give accurate results out that quickly takes a lot of the pressure off of us, because we're not trying to explain why we don't have them yet. And so it does. It makes everybody feel a little more comfortable. It makes everybody feel good that everything's in so quickly, and we've already had, I mean, I'm not sure what time it is right now, but
8:25.
at 8:25, both the Republican and the Democratic primaries have been called, I mean, statewide. So, and then that's not just because we were fast, that's because the entire state, and most of the counties in the state have switched to a very similar system to ours, and it shows that you can actually get the results in quick enough that they can make a determination. It's important. It's very important, and it's important because being the election process, it's every decision, every vote is important, and every person's individual vote. They want to make sure that I sent you this ballot. I want to make sure that you give it just as much value as you give any ballot that if I went to the precinct or if I went early voted. So I send that ballot in, and I need to have this level of confidence, and we need to give that level of confidence that their ballot is going to get every single right that every other ballot has. And it's the job of the canvassing board to make sure that those ballots are given the same level of respect. And they do that by making sure that everything is in line, that the law is followed, and that the process is done. So. And they make the hard decisions. If there's something that's an issue, they're the ones that have to stand by their decision. And so, it's completely open to the public, as you were here, and so you can't say that they sat behind a closed door, and every decision they make is completely open to the public, and that's an important part of it too. The first thing I'd like to say is that until I started working in the elections office, I had no idea what went into it. And I don't expect that anybody else has any idea what goes into it, because you just don't think about it. You go to election day, they hand you a piece of paper. It seems pretty simple, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes to make sure that the right machine gets to the right location, the right ballots get to the right location, that the poll workers are trained and they know what they're supposed to do, that they have all the forms that they need. And it's a huge process. And so without knowing what all goes into it, there's no way to completely understand. And so with that, I'd like to say we have an amazing staff. They know what they're doing. Most of them have been around for quite a long time, so there's a huge amount of knowledge there that you just can't replicate. And without them, it wouldn't work.
This is the exciting part, because right now we've got all the Boy Scouts out here. They're helping us unload. They're getting their community service in. They're helping the community. They're understanding how important it is to vote. We've got troops here from 64, 111. I mean, we've got them from all over town. They're working hard. We bribe them with pizza, a little bit of pizza, and they do good. But it's interesting because these Boy Scouts show up every year since we've been here, and they help us unload the trucks, making sure all the inventory comes back. They just do a wonderful, wonderful job. And so now for the next probably 45 minutes, we will have car after car after car, truck after truck, bringing the equipment back. The clerks are checking in, bringing back their ballots, bringing back all the voting equipment that went out there. And that's going to pretty much wrap it up. We've got a few more absentee ballots to wrap up tonight, but when these kids are done, they're going to be tired, and we will probably be done for the evening when we get down here. And that's how you run an election in Manatee County.
Now, Supervisor, it's a little before 8 o'clock. You've already tallied your votes.
The tally's in. We know what the The tally's in. We're pretty confident on what the final vote number will be. We've probably still got another 500 or 600 absentee ballots to process. More than likely will certainly not change the vote of anything here in Manatee County. You would think that something would materialize, but I got to tell you, when a problem materializes, our crew here, they're on top of it so quick it never turns into a problem. It's just, it's a little minor incident and bang, it's over, and they're all on top of it, and that's what it's going. You got great training. I got to tell you, Laura just does an unbelievable job. Her and Cindy of training everybody. So our people are top notch. I got to tell you, it's so interesting. Laura and Cindy spend all year long recruiting good help. They really do. And then Laura and Cindy take all the time to train them. They're so well trained. So when we just don't have issues out there in the field. The little tiny issues stay tiny issues. And it's never an issue until it becomes a big one. We keep them tiny. That all gets down to the training. I mean, the caliber of people that we've got working for us here in Manatee County. We've just got this wonderful, wonderful staff. The previous supervisor left me with a wonderful staff, and we've just been able to capitalize on it. I got to tell you, you can't say enough. I mean, I was so lucky when Bob Sweat left here. He left me with a fantastic crew, and we've been able to capitalize on it even further. We've recruited some other people who they brought in. Laura and Cindy, we recruited this fantastic group of poll workers. They're well trained. The staff, they never complain. They're here all the time. They hit it hard. I don't know if Manatee County is aware, but Manatee County has a record of being one of the top voting sites in the entire state of Florida, and that's because of the people that we have in Manatee County.